I thought a lot about what I was going to say today, introducing Dr. Doug Burton. And then I couldn't keep thinking about it because I started getting weepy. So I want you to know that he's, in addition to being a world-renowned orthopedic surgeon and so many other accolades, they're all in that little pamphlet I sent out. He is just one of the most extraordinary human beings I have met in my life. And he's this family man. He has 3 children and his beautiful wife, Karen. And what he is doing to change medicine and moving from this place of being a physician to a patient, and what he's going to share today about his story and about medicine in the US and medicine in other countries. I firmly believe that he had his diagnosis because he's going to change medicine for this disease. And I can't think of anything else other to say than thank you for your time today, and thank you for being one of my dearest friends, and I love you. And his wife, Karen, also one of my best friends. We pretty much live together and share our houses and dogs. Thank you for being here. So he's going to talk a bit. Feel free to ask questions along the way. Anything else to add for that? So, okay, Dr. Doug Burton.
Very generous comments.
You know how I feel about you.
Well, it's so nice to see you all, and welcome to Kansas City. For those of you that are from outside of Kansas City, we're pretty. Those of us who live here are pretty proud of our city, and we think we've got a lot of great stuff going on. I think you guys saw a little bit of that this morning, and probably going to see some more this afternoon. And so, welcome, and I'll tell you, I'm pretty grateful to be here. I'll just start with, I've lived a blessed life, and I've had things go my way when I wouldn't have thought that they would have. I was adopted when I was 6 weeks old, so I tell my kids, I spent the first 6 weeks in the orphanage, and then Grandma and Grandpa came and got me, and it's all been roses since then. And so really feel blessed from the beginning. And great parents, great parenting. Grew up in a college town, Manhattan, Kansas. Loved living there, growing up there, and had this calling, I think, to be a physician. And some of that was because my dad had open heart surgery when I was 12 years old and survived it. And this was back in 1980, and open heart surgery wasn't quite as common in 1980 as it is today. But he's 89 now and still going strong. So pretty grateful for that. And so my thought was, I'm going to be a physician, and I was able to do that. I went to Kansas State and then UT Southwestern for medical school. And I kind of always thought I'd do something heart related, but that didn't really speak to me, but orthopedics did. And then when I came up to KU, at this point I'm married, and Karen's my partner. She's the CEO, and I just load the trucks. But I came up to Kansas City, and I met Mark Asher, and I got just enamored with spine surgery, and been very blessed to have my whole 25-year career at the University of Kansas in the Department of Orthopedic Surgery, and been fortunate to meet the right people at the right times to have some accomplishments and achieve some things and some success, and things were really going great for me. It's 2022, and I've been the chair of orthopedic surgery now. I've been named chair officially. They took off the interim tag in July of 22, and so it's November of 22. It's Thanksgiving. Everything is great, and I wake up in the middle of the night on Wednesday morning, day before Thanksgiving, with this splitting headache, and I really don't get headaches, and I did what any doctor would do. I tried to ignore it. I took some Advil and went in and did my surgery that day, and everything was good, but the headache came back. And so I took my Advil, and the next day's Thanksgiving. We're busy, and cooking the turkey, etc. But I realized that the headache keeps coming back when the Advil's wearing off. And so I kind of blew it off for about another week, and then I called my doctor, who's also a good friend of ours, a neighbor, and I said, Rita, I've got this headache. I've had it for like a week, won't go away, except with ibuprofen. She goes, well, that's not good. I said, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Probably ought to get an MRI. Well, in 2022, heading into 2023, it was hard to get an MRI. We were busy, we're growing, and the wait list was pretty high. So I had an appointment to get my MRI in February. And so I was actually talking to a good friend of mine who's a spine surgeon out in Denver, and I said, hey, Shay, got this meeting coming up, but I said, I don't know if I'm going to come because I have this headache. Well, he freaks out on me. He's like, oh my God, you may have a leaking berry aneurysm. You could die any minute. You've got to get an MRI. I'm like, all right. So I actually pulled, my doctor card and got an MRI for the next day. Canceled my 3 surgeries for that Wednesday. And, it's the Wednesday after New Year's Day. It's like the 4th of January. And so I go into the scanner and I, no big deal, I come out and the head of neuroradiology is standing there. And I said, well, John, if you're standing here, this isn't going to be good. He goes, hey, we need to go sit down and talk. So I said, okay. So we go back into a patient conference room, and he says, listen, this is bad. This is a glioblastoma. This is a bad brain cancer. There's really no cure for it. And I said, you probably have months, not years to live. I'm 55. I've got 1 kid in college, 2 out, my wife, my life, all of our expectations of our next, 25 years together, and it's like, wow, that's a gut punch. That was just not what I was expecting. And, it takes a little bit to recover from that. So I call my wife and, we cry and, she's like, should you get a second opinion? I'm like, nah, I can, and I probably will, but I don't think it's going to change what the diagnosis is. So talked to our kids, and which was hard, but fortunately they were all close enough we could bring them in that day. Then I had to go tell my parents, which was still maybe the hardest thing I'd done, still is, and then started telling all our friends. I had to tell Dean Ojo and Steve Stites and Bob and Tammy that I've got to step down as chair. I've got to focus on my health. I can't lead orthopedics. I don't know if that I may not make it through next year. So, or this year even. So it was a pretty hard emotional few days. That meeting I was supposed to go to, which was a bunch of spine surgeons in Phoenix, I zoomed in with them, told all of them what was going on. I met with my department, and it was the first time when I started to realize that when something bad happens to somebody, it doesn't just affect them, but it affects their whole circle. And while I recognized that, intellectually, feeling it was different. And I could feel how this bad news was not just affecting my family, but my friends and my colleagues and my work associates, my work family. And so it was, and you start through these stages of grief because, I looked it up. I wasn't getting bad information. This glioblastoma, of course, I'm a spine surgeon, but not a neurosurgeon. I didn't even know what it was. It's bad. You don't want it. Don't sign up for it because it's not good. And so we kind of get through the weekend, and it's hard. It's like a blur. of, emotion, and a couple of things happened that Sunday. Karen, of course, set up for us to have family pictures with all of our kids and their significant others and together, before I have surgery, because you don't know. I mean, I'm a surgeon. I know how surgery can go. And there's no guarantee I'm going to come out the same person I went in. They're operating on your brain. They're very good. I mean, we had the best guy in the Midwest. Our chair, Paul Camerata, did my surgery. I had complete faith in him. But, I get it. It doesn't always work out well. And I was prepared. I didn't want it to happen, but I knew it could. I may not be the same person. So, we're start getting our ducks in a row. And I had two conversations, one with the guy who's an orthopedic spine surgeon at Brown up in Providence, Rhode Island, who also has a GBM. He'd been diagnosed a year earlier. He kept working. He was getting this vaccine out of England, not the one I'm getting, but out of England, called DC Vax. He was doing another treatment, but he was still working and seeing patients, not operating, and it kind of gave me this, well, I'm not dead yet, He's working. He's almost a year out now from his diagnosis. I mean, there's no reason to quit. And then I also talked to a guy, Talal Khan, came over to visit me that day, and we've known each other since 20 some years, and it just gave me this hope that I didn't have 3 days earlier. And I remember waking up the morning of surgery. I have some advantages. I get added on the surgery schedule. Monday, 5 days later, I have a personal call on a Sunday morning with the head of neurosurgery. I mean, this is just a snippet of all the advantages that I've been given in my life. This is just one of them. But that Monday morning, I woke up and I said to Karen, I said, they say I've got 15 months median overall survival. I haven't been average up to now, and I'm not going to be average now. And I said, my goal is I'm going to live to be 60. And I remember I told my oldest daughter that. She goes, 60? That's not long enough. And I said, well, the steps, baby steps, Caroline, baby steps, So, fortunately, had the surgery. It goes well. Paul did a great job, and we talked about, there's kind of two parts of the tumor. There's the tumor that looks aggressive, which was in my occipital lobe, which is your vision center. And then there's the part of the tumor that doesn't look aggressive, at least right now, which is in my parietal lobe, which is my speech and my motor center. And we were both in agreement that we're not going there, because I wouldn't be the same person if that had happened. But the vision thing, my vision had changed a little bit. I knew that wasn't right. And so the surgery went well. I came out of it fine. By all, intents and purposes, it was successful. Gross, they call it a gross total resection. This tumor's kind of really bad in the way that it grows. It doesn't grow like it's a lump and you can just cut it out. You can't cut it out. Dr. Camerata described to me, he says, Walter Danby 100 years ago would treat this by cutting out the whole half of the brain that it was in. Says it always came back to the other side. You can't cure it. You can't cut it out. So, I'm like, okay, well, I don't want you cutting anything out that, that I need, because, I don't want to, when I die, I don't want to be, paralyzed and blind for the last, year of my life, which a colleague of mine, that's what happened to her. She's an orthopedic surgeon in Denver, Colorado. Unbelievable, but she was paralyzed and blind for the last 6 months of her life. So I knew I didn't want that if I could avoid it. So, you kind of get through it and you're like, okay, I sort of won the first battle. I survived the surgery. I survived essentially intact. And I said, all right, well, let's start looking. And so, again, what are my advantages? Well, the vice chair of neurosurgery at Duke and the vice chair of neurosurgery at UCSF, which are two of the top 5 glioblastoma centers in the world, are good friends of mine. So I text them both. I'm like, hey, and they knew, because they were on that call I had the week before. They knew the diagnosis. I mean, they've taken care of it. They know how bad it is. And I said, hey, I need to get in to see your guys. And so I actually went to Duke and saw my neuro-oncologist at Duke before I actually had my first follow-up visit at KU. And then it took a little longer at UCSF. I would say that Duke was an easier hurdle to get into than UCSF was, which I appreciate how hard it can be now as a patient to find the right person, to get the care. It's a struggle. And here I am with every connection, every resource, and it took me 3 or 4 weeks to be able to get into UCSF. It took me a few hours to have an appointment at Duke. So I learned a lot in terms of access, on how patients view access, and it's really important. And the more you can lower that barrier, the better. And as a physician, I realized that I want that barrier to be high, so I'm seeing only who I want to see. But what the patient wants is to see somebody, and that's one of the many. I kind of knew that before. Boy, when I was on the other side, it really drove it home. The difference in access, and when I consider that, then I think about, well, I've got all the advantages in the world. I've got the wealth to go places. I've got the connections. What about somebody who's out in central Kansas? Who's Medicare and living on Social Security? It's pretty dire. So I really, again, re-emphasize the gratitude that I have for all the advantages that I've been given to even be able to try to make a fight. Because a lot of people look at it and they're like, I just don't have the resources to fight. And that's a real conversation. I've probably talked to 55, 60 people with GBMs over the last 3 years. And I mean, they kind of come out of the woodwork now. And that's a real conversation. Can you travel? Can you get on can you go transatlantic every 4 to 6 weeks? Do you have the resources? Do you have the strength, the stamina, the support system? All of those things matter. I didn't really think about those things before, but they're real. So, I go to Duke and this guy, Henry Friedman, love him to death. He could sell ice to the Eskimos. You've got this essentially terminal brain cancer, and he's this ray of optimism. I'm like, all right, and kind of my perspective is that, you talk to an oncologist, because I operate on cancer patients all the time. I'm like, well, how long do you think they're going to live? Because I don't want them to spend their last 2 weeks of life post-op from some spine surgery. And I'm like, they all think their patients are going to live forever. And so I recognize that inherent bias. But as a patient, I really appreciate it, because I'm like, oh God, I'm glad to hear that. I don't really believe you, but I'm going to go ahead and try and believe you anyways, because I everything I read is bad. So the plan was we're going to do standard of care treatment and then come back, because I think I have something for you that we're doing here at Duke. So we do that. We come back. It's April, 1st of April, 2023. I can remember the visit like it was yesterday. I know Karen can too. That he walks in and he says, yeah, I think that your tumor's too big for this treatment we have here. Right? And so that's the first rug or it's the second rug that gets pulled out from underneath you, and I've seen that, patients that go to the spine surgeon and they say, I can't help you, or I can't help you, and then they try and they don't help you. This get your hopes up and then disappointed. That cycle that patients go through. I knew it as a physician. I could see it. I felt it as a patient. and it does not feel good. And it was, other than the diagnosis, probably the worst day of the whole deal. It was terrible. So then but he said, but we've got this, there's this treatment in Germany. He said, if you had to mortgage your house to pay for it, I'd tell you not to do it. But he says, you're an orthopedic surgeon, you can afford it. He says, so he says, you ought to do it. And so they drew my blood, they connected me with a CGAT in Tübingen, Germany, down in the southwest corner near Stuttgart. And, we sent him my tumor, sent him my blood, sent him my money, and they said we can make you this vaccine, and so in September of 2023 we make our first trip over there. In the interim, I have a MRI in April that didn't look great. In June it looked a little worse. In July I get another little zap of radiation. As a consequence, my right hand and my right foot aren't quite like they were before. It's not that big a deal, but I certainly am not going to operate again. That's for sure. But again, I'm grateful because I see people. I mean, I've had lots of friends die from this already, diagnosed after me. So I'm grateful for every day I've got here and every function I still have in my body. So go over in September. And it was a rough trip. I wasn't this person that you see today.
New Doug, as we call him.
Well, yeah, I was New Doug then,
Yeah.
But New Doug wasn't very functional back then, and I've gotten better. Certainly in the last year and a half. So I had my first treatment. I'll go into that, what that is, in September, and I came back in November. We went to the Chiefs Miami game. Laura Lee was there with us, and
I missed a meeting with these people.
Chiefs won. It was great. And then I also had started watching these podcasts from this guy Scott Rakestraw, who is a PhD chemical engineer from MIT, who's in kind of in healthcare. He advises drug companies and investors, and his wife, of course, gets a GBM. And he's doing these podcasts, Mission GBM, and I'm watching him because, he's not really pulling any punches. He's speaking to you like you understand things, and I didn't understand all of it, but you can look it up. And one of the things I saw, so he concocted this own treatment for his wife, and one of which was Keytruda. And he was explaining why he thought that made sense. And so I went back to Duke to see Henry, and I said, Henry, I want to be on Keytruda. He goes, I don't think so. I said, I don't think you understand. I'm not really asking you. I'm telling you I want to be on Keytruda. He says, all right, well, there's side effects. I'm like, I'm a spine surgeon. We live with complications every case. I'm not afraid of complications. Because I know what the alternative is. I think I need to stack the deck in my favor. So I'm willing to have some complications and suffer through a few things if I think it's going to increase my longevity and along with my quality of life. If my quality of life is diminished, that's a different animal. But if it's a kind of minor stuff or even not major stuff, then it's all right. So I started Keytruda. I'm getting the vaccine, and I have an MRI in November. It's worse again. So I have MRIs that get worse in July, August, October, late November, December. And it's, I'm thinking, this isn't good. This is a bad pattern. And it was weird after the first of the year, in January, I said to Karen, I had an MRI coming up, and we're on pins and needles every MRI, we're worried, is it going to show more? My symptoms aren't changing, but other than kind of that loss of function, which I attribute to the radiation. But boy, we're on pins and needles. So, but in January I said, I feel better. I don't know, maybe it's the Holy Spirit or something, but I feel like I've got this hope that I didn't have before. And went in, had my MRI, stable, and every MRI I've had since then has been stable. And I was given 15 months average, that's median overall survival, and here I am, I'm almost 3 years out from the onset of my symptoms. I think that the treatment that I'm receiving is making a difference. I think the prayers make a difference. But I think prayers alone wouldn't have just gotten me here, And so what they're doing over there, so this gal that is running this treatment program with her husband, they own a DNA sequencing company. She's a PhD geneticist. He's an economist. And they started this company to do DNA sequencing. And at some point along the line, she decided that she would develop this passion project, because this isn't how they make money, of I'm going to treat these rare brain cancers with a personalized vaccine because I think that will make a difference. And they've been doing it for quite a while before I connected with them. And they've improved what they've done since then. Like they now have the ability to measure the T cell response in my blood to the specific antigens that are within the vaccine that I'm being given. That's something that's not a test that we run at KU, I can tell you that. And so that's been really special, because what she's been able to identify is that when you're getting this vaccine, so this vaccine is made against my tumor. It wouldn't necessarily work against Joe Blow's tumor or Jane Doe's tumor. It's for my tumor only. And it's made, it took them 4.5 months to make it, and they made 14 batches of it. And I've had all the doses, and now I'm on my second batch because I'm still here. And we talked about it. I'm like, well, they said, well, here are your options. We could, stop and just watch it. We could reconfigure a different vaccine, or we can keep doing what we're doing. And, this is sort of informed decision making is let's keep doing what we're doing. I'm still here. I don't want to make any changes. The enemy of good is better, as we like to say in the OR. So I've been doing good with this vaccine, and so they sequenced the DNA of my tumor. They sequenced the DNA of my normal cells. They identified what they describe as the neoepitopes. So these are the proteins that live on my tumor that don't live on my normal cells. And there's probably thousands of those. There's a lot of them. I think some of the secret sauce, and I don't really understand this, is they probably do some type of AI analysis of which ones would be most likely to activate a T cell response in my body. That's well beyond my understanding of immunology, though. So it's, I don't get it, but I think it's working. I know a lot of people who have gone over there. I've sent a lot of people over there. I know 3 that have died. I know several that are still alive. And it seems like what makes the difference is if you can create and sustain a T cell response to your tumor, that's good. And if your body doesn't create an immune response, that's bad. That's one of the reasons that I feel pretty strongly about the Keytruda, because what Keytruda does is it keeps the cancer from turning off your T cells. The cancer it's a tough opponent, because number one, my tumors in my brain, which is an immunologically cold environment, right? I mean, nobody wants a lot of inflammation in their brain because there's not a lot of extra space. Like, I can have a swollen knee, it's no big deal. If I have a swollen brain, I can't walk across the floor here. So you can't have much swelling, so therefore there's not a lot of immune response there. And then if there is an immune response, the cancer, because all of our immune cells have an off switch, and the cancer goes in and it flips the off switch and it turns off your immune system. The Keytruda blocks the ability of the cancer to do that. And so that's why I was pretty pro on, well, let's add it, because to me, that makes sense, that you've got to attack this from multiple fronts. If you're just trying to fight a one front war, it doesn't take much movement over here before you're defeated. So that's kind of been my medical story. But I think the bigger story is that I'm a completely different person than I was before. The joke is old Doug and new Doug. And sometimes after I have a cocktail or two, I start to sound like old Doug, and I'm reminded. It sounds a little bit like old Doug there. But I've really focused in on gratitude. And, if you guys have ever gone to dinner with Laura Lee, what she does is, as you sit down, she makes you go around and say what you're grateful for. And I always thought that was a giant pain in the ass when I was over at her house doing that. But what I realized was she was spot on, as she normally is, all along. Because one of the first things that I heard, I've been meeting with a guy at my church every Wednesday morning. One of the first things he said to me is, the depth of your gratitude will define the height of your joy. And I'll tell you what, that is so true, and I try and focus on that daily because, comparison is the biggest joy killer there is, and we sit here, we're here in Johnson County, in Kansas, in the United States of America. I mean, we've kind of got it made, right? I mean, you look around this world, you look at the previous 10,000 years of human existence, we're living pretty good right now. Yeah. So we can come up with a lot of things that we don't like. Man, I mean, we've got it made, and I'm so grateful for that. When I start worrying about the things I don't have, that's this deep, dark rabbit hole, and it's just, that's where the enemy wants you to go. That's where he wants you. Because when you start worrying about what you don't have and someone else has, the life they have that you don't have, that's misery. And so really focusing on my gratitude has been, job one. And when I do that, the joy is just amplified. And I'm a different person because of it. And I've really spent a lot of time trying to focus on spiritual reflection, prayer on a daily basis. Take the time, because I was always too busy. I was always going someplace. We had 6 o'clock meetings, every day almost. I had 6 o'clock, well, certainly a 6:30 meeting every day of the week. And now I'm like, I really don't start before 8. Some days I do, but not very often. And I take time for my gratitude prayer, for my prayer to all my friends with GBM, my family, and I spend a little bit of time with my daily gospel, and it puts my mind in the frame that I'm a better person. And I treat people better, and it's really changed my life. And I say this, from my Christian bias, but I've spent a lot of time looking, Islam, Judaism, Stoicism. You pick the ism out there, and let me tell you that's right up there. Gratitude and understanding that we don't have control. And that control thing is one of the hardest things to get a handle on when you get cancer or when things don't go your way. And we're high achieving adults. We've done all these things. We're in control. I got this. Everything that has happened to me is because of me, because of my intelligence, because of my hard work, because of my innovative spirit. It's all happened because of that. Yeah, maybe. Some of it that's right. But some of it is you can't put a finger on it. And it could change in an instant. You may get the MRI results that you didn't want to hear about. And so there's so much we don't control. And it's understanding that I think gives us the strength to power through it. Because, it's like the serenity prayer for AA. God grant me the serenity to understand what I can't control, the courage to control what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I didn't get it exactly right, but that's about it. You guys know what it is. You can look it up, but
it's close enough.
Yeah, it's pretty close, right? And that's AA's been using that since it was written in 1932 by a U.S. theologian, but they've adopted it since the 40s, and it's part of every 12-step program there is. And when you look at a 12-step program, the first step is understand I have no control over my drinking, and number 2, I'm going to hand that control off to my higher power. And that having a higher power, I think, is pretty important, because there's lots of things that happen that you don't plan on, and they don't seem fair. Why me? Why not me? Why am I special? Right? So it's been a journey for me to really dig into that why, and I try to preach that, so to speak, that be grateful. It doesn't mean quit trying. One of the Dennis Arfman is one of my friends. He's got a GBM and he's out in Boulder, Colorado. And when he sends an email, a lot of people put a little quote at the bottom of their email. And his email is from St. Augustine, he's a 6th century theologian and a saint in the Roman Catholic Church. And his quote is, "Work as though everything depends on you. Pray as though everything depends on God." And, I think that to me, it brings together those two pieces of control. Yeah, I don't have full control, but I need to work hard at the things that I can control. And, that for me is the hard part, is to understand, when you're having success, when things are going well, to realize, my hard work's important, but something else is helping me too. And I don't know what it is, but I'm going to keep looking that direction. So I've been jabbering now for quite a while, and as Laura Lee and my wife in particular could tell you, I can go on for hours. But I'm going to just end it there. Thank you, Laura Lee. Thank you.
Heifers?
I'm not going to say that.
He won't say it.
Don't bait me. Health Executive Forum, and open it up for everybody. Any questions?
Can you share a little bit about what's happening Q1 26 with Dr.
Saskia? So Saskia Biskup is she rang the bell at the NASDAQ a couple months ago. She's been in the U.S. looking for investors. I think that they're setting up to do a phase 1 safety trial run out of Duke and NYU. That's where the volume is. But I think KU is going to be, when we go to phase 2, KU will certainly be a site. Obviously, I've been talking to Jeff and Roy and everybody, about that. So we're really excited about it. But, that's a long ways away. It's a long ways away. We're thinking it's phase 2. But, I got text from somebody with GBM today, who I think is going to go over to Germany. So we're going to keep pushing people there until you can get it done here, and pray for the best.
Okay.
Other questions?
Questions?
Can you talk about how this is, you're still practicing?
Yes.
Can you talk about how this has impacted the way that you engage with patients?
Yes. So, to give you an idea of old Doug and new Doug. So old Doug, I had one clinic a week on Tuesday, and then another clinic twice a month on a Friday, either in Hutch or Salina or at KU where I'd see kids. So I did 2.5 days of clinic a week, and then I operated the other 3 days, sometimes 4 days. And that was my life for 22 years. And I loved it. I mean, I don't know that my wife loved it, but I loved doing it, and she allowed me to do it. And she's the only reason I'm here or could have ever done anything that I've done is because of her. But now I would see 40 to 50 patients in that clinic. Now I have 20-minute slots. Every patient gets 20 minutes, do her follow-up. I saw 8 patients this morning, 7 of them were new. And I just sit there, and most of them, all they need is a little bit of social work and a little encouragement. But I sit there and listen to them and talk to them. And that's the one thing that I've learned is most patients, what they really need is for you to listen to them. Most patients don't need a lot. They don't need some brilliant surgeon to do anything for them. They need someone to sit there and listen to them. And even though they're going to ask you the same question like 5 times and your answer is going to be the same for 5 times, you just need to sit there and let them ask you. And that's not how healthcare economics works at all, as you all know. I mean, you can talk about value-based care, but you don't get paid on value-based care. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. It's about butts in the seats. It's about volume, and that's probably not going to change in my lifetime, and I expect my lifetime to be longer than 60. So, I think that's just the way it is. So you've got to figure out a way to give the patients what they want rather than just what that they need. Because when I saw patients, old Doug, I gave them what I knew they needed, but I didn't always give them what they wanted. And the challenge is the economics of it. Now for me, I'm okay, and I don't need to make more money. I think my wife wants me to keep working, but I don't need to. I'm okay, but that isn't exactly something that you're going to go sell to your board of directors, right? I mean that didn't fly, as they say, that didn't fly on Wall Street. So you've got to figure out a way to make that work. I think that there's been a big push, certainly across the country, and I've seen it at our place at physician wellness, and I think that's directly tied to, if I see 50 patients a day in clinic, I had a nurse, bless her heart, I mean, probably once a month, she'd be crying at the end of clinic, just because the patients are mad, they've been waiting, they maybe didn't get the answer they wanted to hear, that I can fix you, because a lot of times I can't. And I mean, I could operate on you and make money, but I'm not going to make you better, so I wouldn't do it. And people wait and they get their hopes up, and that rug gets pulled out from underneath them, and it's hard. And I think it's a real challenge, and I see it now. I'm kind of in this elder statesman role. I'm the oldest guy. Well, Jackson's older than me, but I've been here longer than him, right? So, but how do we deliver to the patient what they want and still be able to function economically how can my partners that operate see the patients that they need to see, the right patients, and how do the patients get to see who they think they need to see, who they want to see. They may not need to see them, but they want to see them. It's tough. And I'm just kind of at this point, as I'm doing this, I've been for 3 years now, I've been this person who I don't operate on anybody. So I don't have any biases, that's good, because, as I tell my residents, there's nothing more dangerous than a surgeon with an empty OR schedule. Because then your bias is, everything looks like a surgery. As opposed to when you're busy, you're like, you'll be all right, you don't need it. So, your perspective changes. I mean, if you don't think that you have an inherent bias, you're kidding yourself. We all do. Everybody in this room does. You can't escape it. And what you need to be able to do is to recognize it and be honest with yourself in your decision making. And that's what I tell my partners. I'm like, listen, you gotta, there's a bias here. You've got to acknowledge it. And it's hard. It's hard to really, do things that paint you in a negative light. It takes a lot of insight to do that. And some of us are better at others. I'm not that good at it, but I'm trying. So, I'd say keep trying, because if you think you've figured it out, then you for sure haven't. Yeah.
I'm curious if you are building your career in healthcare and going through this experience, if your opinion has changed in any way about the way the United States does drug delivery development. Because I've had personal experience with a close friend with ALS, and
Yeah.
she got caught in the donut hole of wanting to literally sign a waiver to say, please just give me this only drug that exists,
Right.
that has any chance,
Right.
and then not being able to get into the trial and then not getting it.
Right.
So, are we too conservative in allowing people who have very significant shortened predictions of how, and knowing that there are certain things that are ultimately going to end in death, not allowing them to try sooner?
Yes. Short answer. I don't think there's anything that makes me madder. We went to the neuro-oncology meeting last year, Karen and I did, and when I sat in the room listening to all the podium presentations of these studies, and they were talking about their control group, I thought my head was going to blow off the top of my neck. I mean, okay, this person's got 15 months to live. I mean, my life expectancy on death row in Texas is better than that, right? I'll live longer on death row than I will from a GBM. Why is there a control group? It's insane.
So is that going to ever change? I mean, where is the...
Well, I think that there are some rare diseases that get classified into this, you don't have to do a phase 3 randomized double-blind trial. The problem is I don't think they're liberal enough with that. And, but I can also see the other side, right? I can see the side of, I've got something bad, and let me tell you, if you've got something bad, you'll sign up for anything. If someone's back is hurting, I could convince them to do anything. All right, and so you've a lot of those constraints from the Food and Drug Administration are to protect the patients, and so I get angry and I feel it. I've got a friend with ALS right now. I've had one die from it. I get it. I've diagnosed it before. It sucks, but I also know that there's got to be some constraints, or else you're going to have some bad actors will engage. They're all out there. So it's a challenge, and I think that I think we'll see. This when Saskia starts her trial, it'll be a phase 1 efficacy. There won't be a control group, but when we go to phase 2, we'll see. And I don't know how the FDA will classify it, but I know that I know a lot of people who have GBM that would certainly be willing to go to Congress and speak their thoughts. I mean, you're talking about a disease that, Beau Biden died from it, Ted Kennedy died from it, John McCain died from it. I mean, these are the wealthiest, most powerful families in the United States. They're dying from it. What's the common man or woman have? They're screwed, right? No hope.
Thank you for that perspective.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Other questions?
Do you think there's greater access from European countries to the advanced
Could you repeat
treatments
the
that are
question?
taking place in Germany? So I'm from the UK,
Yeah.
for example, and I have a friend that's in a very similar situation.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if the constraints are around the structure of the US health system, or whether Europeans have greater access to those treatments in Germany.
It's a really good question. I certainly see people from other parts of the EU that I've seen them in clinic, in Germany. But I will also say that, Saskia has gotten tremendous resistance in Germany for her treatment. And one of the things that is a little unique about what she does is, she makes the treatment herself and then she prescribes it herself. If I could make it in my basement, I could prescribe it because as a physician, I can prescribe whatever I want. What we can't do here in the United States is we can't market and sell a product for a disorder or a disease that is not approved by the FDA. So I think there may be some lower constraints, certainly in the UK and in the rest of the EU, but I don't know that it's not the wild, wild west over there. There are constraints and there should be. There should be. It's that balancing act.
It's really tough.
Yeah, it is. Other questions?
So how often do you get the vaccine?
So when I started in 23, the plan was I went over there every 4 to 6 weeks. The first week that I went, I actually got 4 treatments. So I was there for a week and I got a shot a day, 4 out of 5 days. Every time I've gone over since then, I've gotten 1 treatment. And I was going every 4 to 6 weeks until July of 24. And then I had this reaction where every spot, because all the shots are right around your umbilicus, your belly button, and you get 4 injections. They split the vaccine into two doses. So you get two doses, 10 in one, 10 in the other. So you get all 20 in 2 shots. And then they also give you another injection of granulocyte stimulating factor, which gets your dendritic cells to migrate to that area to begin the process of training the T cells. And that time I got that shot, like every place I'd been injected before swelled up. And they kind of freaked out a little bit, and they blasted me with some Benadryl, not steroid. I demanded that they not give me any steroids because that'll suppress my immune system. That's counterproductive. But I let them give me the Benadryl. I slept for 40 minutes or something, and then then I didn't get another shot for the rest of 2024 because my T cell numbers looked good. I'd had that reaction. They said, as long as your T cell numbers are strong, because they're measuring my CD4 and my CD8 T cells specific to the antigens that were part of the vaccine, and as long as those were good, they said, we're going to hold it. Well, in the blood test I had in, I think it was December, when it came back in January when I went over there, it had dropped a little bit, so they gave me a vaccination. And then when I went back 3 months later, they gave me another vaccination, which was my last one. And so at that point, they said we had to make the decision, do we re-up or not? We said yes. And so I went over in August and had an injection, and then I'm going to go back in November after my daughter's wedding and get another one. Yeah.
I have a question for
Yeah.
Mrs. Dr. Burton.
Yeah.
So we all know that you know, the wife is the backbone of every, you know.
Of everything.
But we also know that the caregivers are kind of the silent heroes, and I'm sure that Doug would say the same thing. What's the biggest thing you've learned?
A lot. I mean, I've obviously learned to be grateful also, but you also have to hide your emotions, particularly from the kids, because you have to be the strong person, and if I'm crumbling, they're going to lose all hope. So that's been difficult for sure. But to be patient, because he is different than who he was before physically and a little bit mentally, I mean, but yeah, it's been a little bit of a challenge, but it's fine.
Where do you get your refueling? How do you refuel?
My friends, for sure.
Yeah.
Drinking at my house with the dogs. She has a male Doberman. They have 2 dogs, but one of them is out of Romeo. So we bring the big dogs to the backyard
Yeah,
and run the dogs and giggle
Yeah.
about the dogs running and
For
tripping
sure.
over each other.
yeah.
How do you feel?
How do I feel?
How do you feel?
I feel great.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm working, I'm exercising, you know, I really feel good. I'm not the same. I mean, I am not the same person. Physically, I'm not the same as I was 3 years ago. You know, I need more sleep. I wear out quicker. I can't read the same. You know, there's certain things that are pretty subtle that I can't do like I did before. I don't remember things as well as I did before. I remember them pretty good, but
You still remember a lot.
Yeah.
but
Photographs.
Yeah.
Also,
Right.
part of your
Yeah, but
extraordinary
yeah, but
thing is your brain, how smart you are.
yeah, but I mean, I know I'm different, but in some ways, it's made me better
Right.
because I am more patient, and I get it, and I said to this friend of mine, I said, you know, I just can't read like I used to. And he was like, yeah, you read like the rest of us now. So shut up. And I mean, it's true. I mean, like when we're watching a show, and now, you know, at this age, we watch everything with subtitles so that we can understand what they're saying, right? And I can't finish reading the subtitles before it flashes. And I mean, I didn't even consider that before. So there's some little things, but you know, also there's aging. And you know, that's the other thing that you have to factor into it, right? We're all getting old. No one's getting out of here alive, and we're gonna wear out on the way to the box. I mean, that's just the way it goes. And it just is that way. And so you've got to factor that into, and so I don't worry too much about it. Again, as long as you're grateful for what you have, you don't worry about things you don't have. Yeah.
One of the observations that I made when I encountered this good friend going through this, and that was sort of the most catastrophic thing that I had dealt with, is how much I had to manage my tolerance for the world during that time, because people made such big deals out of such stupid shit. And it was hard. It was like, that was one of the things that, just as a friend, as a caregiver, that I had to manage, because I was finding myself getting extremely impatient with people at my work, people in my personal life, who were just so, it was like, are you kidding me? Like, why are you making such a big deal out of this stuff? So it's just like, it's, you know, it's an observation that I still try to keep true, you know, is like, just don't sweat the small stuff, don't sweat the small stuff.
You got it?
Because of all the things
Back
that
there.
you said.
You had a question. Your hand was up.
Yes, thank you so much. This
Yeah.
has been unbelievable. So to follow on the question about how are you different with your patients, I would ask, how are you different, or how have you been able to influence your colleagues? You may have heard that ortho and spine surgeons have a little bit of a reputation in the healthcare industry.
Well, as W.C. Fields used to say, I resemble that remark. It's a challenge. You know, I'd like to just say it's just the neurosurgeons that are that way, but I know for a fact that that's not true. And you know, I think that there's no easy solution to that. I think that you've got to sit down with the group, and you know, and you've got to decide as a organization what's important. Because, you know, if you say, I'll use a neurosurgeon as an example, only because mostly all they do is spine surgery, you know, in private practice. So all they do is spine surgery, and all they want to see is somebody who needs spine surgery. Okay? So, you know, if you can, and some of them, I think some of them just aren't going to have the capacity to be that person that we're describing that the patient wants them to be. And so one of the things you do is you try to build a buffer around them, which I'm sure people do, so that, you know, somebody who just has back pain that doesn't need a surgeon doesn't see them. It's hard to sell that to patients, though. I mean, that's one of the struggles that we have, is that, you know, the patients, they go online, they're like, oh, you know, Dr. Jim, he's so famous, I want to see him. And, you know, Dr. Jim was like, why are you seeing me? You know, that's the first words out. Actually, I'm dealing with a patient who said that was the first words out of the surgeon. Why are you seeing me? You know, but I understand that perspective. You don't have any studies. There's nothing I can do for you, but that's not what the patient wants. You know, and so part of it is a culture change in those services, and, you know, trying to work on, and we're actually, funny enough, going to be working on that at KU here in a little bit, because we've got to figure out how we can give the patient what they want and not shut down the economic engine of the health system. I mean, it's not the only economic engine, but it's one of them. You know, because if I've got 3 partners who are operating 3 days a week, and they need 2 clinic days a week to fill those OR slots, and I'm putting a bunch of patients in those clinic slots that don't need surgery, guess what? There's no surgeries at the end of that. And so that's, I mean, I don't have an answer for it. So if one of you do, I'd love to hear it. Because it's a challenge, yeah.
So, first of all, thank you so much, both of you, for sharing your life philosophy, how you got through it for both of you. So Dana-Farber has this program of anybody that calls their contact center then goes into a cancer diagnostics clinic with a bunch of internists.
Right.
And they do that so that they can start sorting out the very point, which is what do you have, what do you want, what do you need? And they regard it as a better stickiness when they get triaged into the physician, the right practice. Reactions or
I think that's spot on. I will counter with the resources that it takes to have that program works in cancer because they make so much money off their 430B and the pharmaceuticals. I mean, that's where the money comes from. And so when you move from
430B?
340.
did I say 430?
Yeah.
340?
340B.
We know what you meant.
You knew what I meant.
We know what you meant.
I mean, I've got a brain tumor, so.
I still need the translation.
Yeah. What's that?
What is it?
340B.
Yeah,
So
340B.
the big centers that take care of a lot of Medicaid, they get this break from the government, and it really makes drugs really profitable for them.
Okay.
So, you know, and cancer's probably the biggest player in that, right? So there's money in cancer. There's probably money in cardiology. I didn't really realize this until I was on the authority board's quality committee, and we got this presentation from the cardiologist. And this whole team of researchers came in. There were all these people that were digging into the numbers. And I'm looking at them like, look at all those people working in cardiology, just doing that. None of them are generating revenue. There's no E&M or CPT codes associated with all these warm bodies that are cranking things, right? But what that means is that every health system decides how much they can afford for their overhead in each section, right? And how much they can afford varies on how much money that section makes. And guess what? If you're pediatrics, it sucks for you. If you're OB, it sucks for you. If you're cancer, pretty good. Heart, pretty good. Neurosurgery, pretty good. Orthopedics, pretty good. But that's the way, once we've organized everybody into these health systems, you know, there will always be the haves and the have-nots. And that's the reality. So Dana-Farber, the KU Cancer Center, it's awesome. But it's because there's these people that don't generate any revenue that are giving patients what they want.
Right.
Got it, thank you.
Okay, we have a couple more minutes. If anybody else would like to ask a question or two.
Doug, what do you do for fun that you didn't do before you were diagnosed?
Well,
That's a good one.
very good question. I exercise more. I cook a lot
I
more.
said for fun.
Well, I don't do hard exercise. You know, I take my dogs on a walk and I do yoga and things like that. But I like to cook,
He's an amazing cook.
and I have a little bit of a wine collection, and I enjoy that.
Better than Marley's.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're going to your wine cellar.
And it's not as big and nice and fancy as yours, but there are more bottles. And then right now I'm trying to learn Italian. I tried to learn French. I didn't go very far with the French, but I'm doing better with Italian, I think. You know, I just try and enjoy things that I didn't enjoy before.
Yeah.
You know, like I'll enjoy a sunset now that I never even noticed before. And you can simplify it. It doesn't have to be fancy. I don't have to go to France.
Yeah.
I can just sit on my driveway and watch the sunset and listen to cicadas, and I like that.
Oh, that's awesome.
And drink a fine glass of wine.
At times.
Or a brown liquor. No.
Right.
What do you do?
What do I do for
That
fun?
you do for self-care that you didn't do before?
Oh, I don't know what I do that I didn't do before.
Or
Well,
I
she
think
would.
doing a good job.
Well, she had a more balanced life than I
Karen
did.
owns a jewelry shop downtown too.
Yeah.
So she's got a business and
She's got a jewelry shop. She works out.
I probably exercise more
Yeah.
because now you're home to cook.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say.
You were a more balanced person than I was.
Doug, do you see the vaccine as the future for all cancers?
Well, I think this is going to be part of the solution for a lot of different cancers, and I know that Saskia's plan is that once they get into phase 2 trials, they're going to go for ovarian, pancreatic, and either lung or colon. I can't remember the other one. Because, you know, I've got a friend, he's an orthopedic spine surgeon at OHSU, Oregon Health Sciences. His wife was the chief of transplant surgery there, and she has metastatic uterine cancer, and she's actually in Heidelberg getting some type of a vaccine. They looked at what Saskia does in Tübingen, and they thought that Heidelberg has more experience with metastatic uterine cancer. But I think that for metastatic disease, and personalized medicine, you've heard of CAR T. I think that this is probably better than CAR T because CAR T is focused on one antigen, and I've got 20. And I think they'll get faster and better at the DNA sequencing and the vaccine production. So I think that's going to be part of the next big steps in cancer treatment.
In our lifetime?
How long are you going to live?
Hopefully.
I think so. I do.
Yeah.
Good
I
to hear.
do. Yeah.
You should write a book, first of all. Help negotiate that better. You share this with many people in large rooms with your fellow peers and physicians? Or it's an amazing story. It's very uplifting. I just
Thank you.
much better
Oh, you're
hearing
so
you share
sweet.
it.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. I have a little bit. I did a podcast yesterday, and I've done a couple other ones. So I take every call I get, and so I get calls from people with GBM all over the country, certainly even all over the world, and I have certainly made an effort that I will always answer. I'll always talk to them, help them. I think that's one of the reasons God's letting me live, is to do that.
Good. Wow.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.